Welcome in, everybody. Making the cut, week 13. Our apologies for being a little bit late today, but late is better than never. So sorry, got some local issues and some technical issues and things that we needed to kind of get straightened out. So we're starting a little late tonight, but don't worry, this will all be there for you. And if you miss it, it'll always be on YouTube. Check it out. So it all gets uploaded there anyway. But Lance, how are you doing, buddy?
Better than that Monday night putrid football game. That was
That's low bar.
disgusting to watch. That was probably the worst primetime game I've seen, and that's after seeing Zach Wilson in primetime and Russell Wilson in primetime multiple times over the past couple of years.
So I have a confession to make, which is I have been so wiped out from coming off the holiday and just being so tired that I, honest to God, just fell asleep after work on yesterday. And I did not see any of that game except for like the last couple minutes of it. So I had to go back and like try to catch up on it.
there wasn't much to catch up
I
on.
should have just gone to bed. I ended up watching the game on like ×4.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing, like, I was like, this is pointless. You're not going to learn anything from this. There's no meaningful information that is being taught to us in this game. It's all stuff we already know. Justin Fields is bad. The Bears are bad. His decision-making is bad. The Vikings are overrated.
Yeah.
The Vikings are highly overrated and are not really a playoff team. It's similar to that team that they had last year. Just without like if they still had Kirk Cousins, I feel like they probably would win 10 games, and they'd get bounced in the first round again.
Even having Jefferson out there, I feel would at least help.
It would definitely help.
Yeah, but
so you're dealing with a situation like that in the background, which is just really ugly, and man, it's ugly. So no, that game was terrible. So yeah, we learned nothing from that. 2 weeks to go. So for the regular season, so it's crunch time now. These are the must-win games typically, unless you've already clinched a playoff spot, and then you're playing for seeding. Or I know one lucky duck in a league I played in already has clinched a first-round bye, and I'm like, oh, that must be nice. That must be nice. Kick your feet up on the desk. Don't have to worry about this for 2 weeks. Just come back, take a little break, and come back feeling strong. But we can't all be that lucky. So couple interesting things for this week. Because the NFL in its infinite wisdom did not want to have any teams on buys for the holiday weekend, they have decided to have the second part of Bipocalypse right as people are getting ready for the fantasy playoffs, because the NFL does not give a crap about your fantasy team or about whether or not you win money in your fantasy league. That's our job to figure that out for you. The NFL doesn't give a damn. So you have 6 teams on a bye, which is not ideal. Don't know why we couldn't do 4 and 4 for 13 and 14, but hey, what do I know? I just work here. So you have the Ravens, the Vikings, I am doing this from memory, so help me. It's Ravens, the Bears, Ravens,
the Raiders,
Vikings, Bears, Raiders,
the Bills, and the Giants.
And what was the last one?
Giants.
And the Giants. That's right. No one cares. And the Giants. So you've got 6 teams on a bye. So what that translates to is no Saquon, no Lamar, no Baltimore RBs, no Zay Flowers, no Odell Beckham, if you cared. In a deep league, you might have cared. No Josh Allen, no Stephon Diggs, no James Cook, which has been shockingly relevant the last couple weeks. No Gabe Davis, which has been completely irrelevant, but it's still a thing people ask about. No Fields, no Bears RBs, no DJ Moore. Like, you have a lot of usable. I didn't even get done listing it all off. Like, you have no Addison, no Dobbs, no Jefferson, because it's on bye, and you haven't had Jefferson anyway, but I know people have been asking a lot about that because they're hoping he'd come back.
Oh, yeah.
No Minnesota RBs that I know people have somewhat been forced into using. You're missing a lot of stuff. The only one that doesn't matter really is like the Giants, because that's mostly you're just missing Saquon and nothing else matters. But you have a lot of teams on bye this week, and it is ugly out here, and here, this will help emphasize what we're talking about. Half-point PPR. I don't know why that matters in this context of this, Dale. Welcome in, Dale. Would you drop Herbert or Purdy? Boy, that's that question. If you asked that question at the beginning of the year, people would have laughed at you. That's a messed up question, my friend. Hang on, I'll answer you in just one moment. I like the 0.5 PPR thing, though. That makes me chuckle every time. Quarterback. I love that. That is not relevant, but okay. What's funny is I have them right next to each other in my rest of season rankings. Literally at 9 and 10, respectively. And if you were to want to split them on playoff schedule, I can't because they both have really good rest of season schedules.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the question. It is very much a coin flip. It's just funny because if you'd asked us at the beginning of the year, people are like, "What are you, stupid?" But no, given where we are now, I totally get the question. The one thing I don't like about the Herbert schedule is he has to play Denver twice. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that. I would argue that I have Herbert one spot higher. I would probably rather have Herbert on balance because of just the theoretical upside that is Herbert. But Purdy doesn't play Denver twice. Purdy has 3 really good matchups down the stretch. Eagles, Cardinals, and then Commanders for championship weekend if you get that far.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Herbert, he gets the Patriots this week, which you love.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's Denver, Raiders, which has all season been a good matchup, but they've been playing better. Bills, Denver again.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great. But this is very much a coin flip for me. And I have Herbert one spot higher in my rankings. So if you want to take this answer very literally, I'd say it would be Herbert. But I would not in any way bat an eye if somebody was just so frustrated by Herbert and the Chargers that they just cut him and wanted to deal with Purdy instead.
Mm-hmm.
Really wouldn't blame you. So that's my answer to that.
Yeah, I'd go Herbert too. I mean, they're honestly probably gonna, if you took the names away, they're probably gonna have similar production, but you're probably gonna feel better about having Herbert rather than dropping him. And if you're going against someone and he has a giant game against you, you're gonna feel like, why did I drop him?
Yeah, you're gonna feel real dumb.
Yeah.
Like real dumb is gonna be it's gonna be hard to. You don't want to live. You're not gonna want to live with yourself after that. That's one of those decisions where you're going to be looking at yourself in the mirror the next day and be like, I'm an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you just get into that type of deal
Yeah.
with that whole question. But I get the question, Dale. That is a legitimate conundrum over there.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I don't know that. Like I said, if you wanted to keep Purdy because you were just so over it with dealing with the Chargers and that constipated offense, and just wanted to be done with it, I would not blame you. That game was tough to watch.
Yeah.
The only reason this is even still a conversation is because their schedule does get easier. But Purdy does have a slightly better schedule. It's just he's an inferior player is the problem. But yeah, you have a ton of people on bye this week. Trade deadline's passed. And then we've started getting the fresh wave of injuries because that is the theme of this season. So Lance, we'll play a little game real quick before we get started. We'll play a little game. Christian McCaffrey is the wide receiver. Yeah, he might as well be a wide receiver. Christian McCaffrey is the running back number 1 in PPR. That is not shocking. Shouldn't be shocking to anyone. Josh Jacobs is the number 4 running back in PPR. How many points do you think separate those two players?
I want to say at least 30, but it's probably closer to 50.
The answer is 90.
Jesus.
It's actually more than 90 now. So that was last week when I pulled this. I didn't update that given yesterday's and Sunday, Monday's run of games. But I did take a cursory glance at it, and they had basically the same point total in PPR. So it's going to be about the same. Yeah. What that should tell people, what that should say is what you could look at that and say is like, oh, well, Jacobs must be having a really great season. No. The struggles of Josh Jacobs have been well documented all year long, where people have been complaining about it up until they fired Numbnuts and turned the team over to Pierce, which is the appropriate way to address McDaniels is Numbnuts. So I would defend that in court, by the way. So you can at me with your slander if you want, but like, yeah, I would defend that in a courtroom. The struggles of Jacobs have been well documented. It has only been recently since they turned the team over to Pierce, and Pierce has come on every media platform he can be on and has said, Josh Jacobs is the heart and soul of my team. I am going to give him 20 plus carries a game. And that's just how this is going to work. He is my best player. He is getting the ball. And then we are going to give anything else to Devonta Adams unless, we really have something, somewhere else. And it's like they gave Myers a little bit of run last week because they just weren't covering him.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, well, he's wide open. I mean, that just makes sense. But the whole situation here is by design, they are going to run the ball 20 plus times with Josh Jacobs because that's what McDaniels wasn't doing. Shockingly, they've started winning games, and Jacobs' numbers have come up. And he had one dud in there under Pierce, but on aggregate, it's been better. The issue is that what people want to say is like, oh, well, that's just because McCaffrey's a stud and Jacobs is getting volume and stuff. No. If you layer those numbers up to year-on-year average, you're missing like 5 names, my friends. There should be like 5 or 6 people that occupy. Jacobs should be like the RB 11, 12 or something like that. 9 on a good, maybe by now he could have clawed back up to 9. We should not be having a conversation about Josh Jacobs being a top 5 RB. There are so many names missing from that list. And it just really, the takeaway for what people should be understanding is the level of injuries this year have been outside of normal. It's been beyond the pale, and it's been deeply unfun. And the reason why I say that is because that also really explains a lot of the records for the NFL teams. You have teams that are punching above their weight because they're just slightly healthier, and you have teams that are punching way below their weight because they're beat to hell. And that happens every year to a certain extent, but this year is outside of that. That's why I've been telling people, like, people are like, oh, look at the AFC. Everybody's 5-6 or 6-5. Yeah, that shouldn't be like that. If you actually break down the individual rosters, that really shouldn't be that way. That's why I've been saying for a long time, there's about 4 good teams in the NFL this year. There's about 4 good teams. There's about 3 teams that are okay-ish, that are like, and then you have a bunch of just schlock. The rest of it is schlock that might get lucky any given week. And it just really, this year has not been as much fun as other years. I'm not going to lie. If this is your first year playing fantasy football, I'm sorry. It's not normally like this. It's not normally this bad. But this year has been really bad. And without wishing to be too critical of the NFL, they've got to do something about the officiating, because the officiating is literally killing me this season. I'm pulling my hair out watching these games. Like, just, I look under this hat, I look like Homer Simpson after this year, where I'm just like, that's pass interference. Okay, that's not pass interference, but you called it pass interference. Okay, that's not roughing the passer. Okay, that is roughing the passer, but you didn't call that. The Ravens Chargers game had 2 blown calls in the first 4 minutes of actual game time.
Right.
Do you have a dog or a cat or something?
You
have a dog or a cat, or do you have like a blanket?
No, I have a blanket right here.
Oh, it's a blanket.
I do have a dog, but
that would have been way more fun if you had like a little white dog in your lap. I'm like, oh, okay, Mr. Bond, we'll put the dog on camera. The engagement will go up with the dog on camera. I've proven this over. This is not science. I've proven this many times. Put the dog on camera, engagement goes up. It's not a complicated concept. People love dogs, cats, and cute babies. You actually have 2 of those things in your house. We should probably just showcase them. Like,
Probably should.
Dog and son should probably be on there, but I don't. I have weird things about. I don't really love the idea of people using their kids for content. That opens up a whole Pandora's box of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. I don't really love that idea. Like maybe it's not a great idea to take every piece of information about your child and just upload it for free on social media. Seems like not a great plan, given especially my line of work outside of this, where you get into some of the things I know about cybersecurity, and it's like, oh, yeah, don't do that.
Yep.
If you knew some of the things I know, you wouldn't upload pictures of your kids on the internet, is one. And two, you wouldn't have bumper stickers on your car. People don't think about that, but you are volunteering information about yourself that you shouldn't volunteer. And you're lowering the resale value of your car if you care about such things. But it's more for me, like, if you're paranoid a little bit, little tinfoil hat kind of thing, don't have bumper stickers on your car. And don't upload information on social media about yourself and especially about your kids. Because now what's happening is people can actually, like, with AI and generative algorithms, if you give people pictures of your kids, they could actually age them up. And if they get pictures of your kids' voice recording, they can actually put that through a synthesizer and then actually use that as leverage against you. I've actually seen a rise in this as part of my day job outside of this, where people are like getting hooked into scams like that. And it's like that. First of all, what a piece of shit do you have to be to try and like make money off that? Like, holy shit, those people belong in like Gitmo. Like, lock those people up and throw away the key. Those people are inhuman monsters. But at the same time, you got to be aware that that shit's happening.
Right.
And it's scary. It's the same thing that I tell people about how, when kids graduate high school, parents put those signs in the front yard. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. You're giving away information, and you're also just inviting thievery. Like, don't do that. Like, not a great plan. Like, have a graduation party, celebrate your kids going on to the next level of life. Get a sign, maybe put it out for the party that day. Take that shit back inside. Don't do that. Like, the world is rough, man, is what I'm trying to say here today. Is kind of my message. Fantasy football aside. Like, but yeah, for fantasy football, I'm sorry for everybody if this is your first year, because please come back next year, because it'll be better. I promise you. This has just been a weird year with a lot of crap. And I go through all of that to say we got a fresh crop of injuries coming in this week, and we're just going to do it right now because that's all anybody cares about. Jonathan Taylor is going to be out for the next 2 to 3 weeks, which effectively for fantasy purposes means he's out for the remainder of the regular season and into the playoffs.
Yeah.
He messed up his thumb on his way to ruining my week in a dynasty game where he beat me single-handed, and then he hurt his thumb, and there you go. So it's a surgical procedure. He's going to come back, and Zach Moss's value just went from nothing again to through the roof. Zach Moss is the number one waiver claim in all formats. I would give Zach Moss, given where we are in the waiver and guillotine, half my available fab, if not more, if I don't have much left. If I need a running back, and you probably would, because he's going to be the best Band-Aid you're going to get, and it's not close. And he's rostered in right about 54% of leagues, so that is significant. Like, he's available in 46% of leagues. Like, yeah, go check.
Well, and especially when earlier this season he's proven, like, no one saw them coming out of the left field and re-signing Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
Or like, no, everyone thought Zach Moss was going to be the guy, and especially with how he was playing earlier in the year, everyone thought he was going to be the guy. So this is completely different than, oh, so-and-so might take over because, the starter is struggling. Like, this is a guy who's handled the workload before, can do it, and it's Gardner fucking Minshew under center. They know how I think it was Scott Hansen, maybe someone else said it, but they're like, he's a 2023 version of Jameis Winston. He's them in the game, and he's going to keep the opponent in the game.
Yeah.
So the Colts know that. They're going to try to minimize the amount he has to touch it total. They're going to give it to Zach Moss. Zach Moss is going to get fed.
And believe it or not, they're still in the hunt for a playoff spot.
AFC South is exciting.
They're actually trying to win enough games to go to the playoffs. They're not just going to pack it in with Taylor getting hurt for a couple weeks. They are literally going to try and cobble it together. And given how that division works, they could actually get a wild card. It's not outside the realm of possibility that I don't think they can come back and overtake Jacksonville.
No.
I don't even think they can overtake Houston, if I'm being honest.
Are they currently in the spot above Houston right now?
I'm not entirely sure.
I thought they were, but I could have totally misread that. I know for whatever reason, the Steelers.
They're tied. Colts and Texans are tied at 6-5.
Okay.
And Jacksonville's 8-3. I don't really think either one of those teams could overtake Jacksonville.
No,
I feel like Jacksonville has pretty much locked up the division at this point. It's tough to say that with 13, 14, 15, 6 games to go. Yeah, that's correct. Because we're officially 2/3 of the way through the NFL regular season after the completion of last night's game. So we're 2/3 of the way through the season. It's unlikely that with 6 games to play that they could overtake Jacksonville, either one of them. But it's not outside the realm of possibility. And again, the Colts are 6-5. I mean, you're not going to give up 6-5 with 6 games to play. No, realistically, we need to win 3 of them.
They didn't give up when they lost Richardson, so losing Taylor isn't gonna.
Well, especially when you're going to get Taylor back before the end of the year.
Yeah,
theoretically.
So they're going to keep pushing. The only thing I'd say is I would say Houston's a lot more fun. And so I do hope for that reason alone.
Houston's offense is a lot better than the Colts, but the Houston defense is horrible. And that's why that team is 6-5, is because that team is going to be interesting because they clearly are not that's their quarterback. That's just it. That's where we are in life. It's Stroud's team now. They're going to build around him. You don't have a rookie year like this. No. And then just they're going to go another way. No, come on now. Be reasonable. That is the expectation now after this year is going to be to go to the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
And that team is going to spend money like hell this offseason trying to fix the O-line and fix that defense and maybe get 1 or 2 more playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. But they feel like I'm sure they feel like they hit a home run with Tank Dell because that's outkicked just about everybody's expectations already.
Yeah, no one.
Nico Collins, after a million years in the league, has finally started to figure out how to play football. And that's nice because they don't have to pay him a lot.
Right.
And so he's there. You might want 1 more receiver, right? If you could get 1 more wideout, maybe you do it if you can get it under the cap. Your running back situation isn't great, but does it really matter?
No.
And then, so it's like, what are you trying? They like Schultz. They paid him. That's already paid for. So that's off the table. So what are we really discussing? It's O-line and it's defense then. Keep Stroud upright. Prevent him from getting hurt. You have the money to afford to pay for that crap at this point. And then defense. Their whole secondary needs to be redone. Their secondary is really bad, especially their safeties. So it's like you gotta redo how that whole defense works in the background. But hey, got plenty of money, plenty of draft picks, plenty of money. It's doable. So that team's going to be fun to watch in the future. That might be the first time that there's optimism around Houston. Good God. Since Deshaun, early Deshaun.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson and Hopkins when they
were young.
Oh yeah, when they had Kansas City down in the playoffs. What was that? 24-3.
Yeah.
And then Kansas City came back and
the rest is history.
Yep. Yeah. No, they definitely, if they can keep him upright and keep him healthy. I know their offensive lines had so many injuries and everything like that, but if they're able to obviously
They're
address
going to
that,
spend a
but
lot of money trying to solve those problems.
you would
So that'll be
think.
interesting in the future. Indy will
Hmm.
also be interesting in the future
Oh yeah.
because Richardson and now with Taylor, there,
Hmm.
Pittman has outperformed just about everybody's expectations except for maybe me.
Hmm.
And I like Downs. I never liked Pierce. I think you can move on from that, but their defense needs some assistance in the future. But it's
Hmm.
not it's not in as bad of a state of disrepair as Houston's is.
No.
But yeah, that division's going to be interesting because you've got Lawrence as well trying to do
Hmm.
something. But the problem is that the shelf life on Lawrence is going to get to a point where they have to pay Lawrence before anybody else has to pay their quarterback, and that's going to make it tough for
Hmm.
Jacksonville to sustain because their team is going to get worse year on year. And then the Titans are the Titans. I mean, that team's going to have to. That's like a full rebuild.
Yeah.
You need to tear that team down and start over. If you want Will Levis as your quarterback for this part of the rebuild, knock yourself out. I don't care.
Hmm.
But like the whole team needs to go. That team needs to get turned over.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. But that's the big injury. There are others, but
Hmm.
that's the one that everybody is talking about as it relates to this week. That's the one that everybody is uh, figuring out in the background. So tonight, go and take a peek at the waiver wire because you want to get a hefty bid on Zach Moss, especially if you're in Guillotine, because you know you only have 2 weeks left.
It
So this
might.
is right now where in my usual Guillotine strategy, we are deploying capital. We are in full capital deployment mode. This is it. The alarm bells are ringing. So the teams that are getting eliminated now, I guarantee you are good. So they have good stuff. And a lot of people have already burnt their budgets up by now. So spend that money to get things that will help you for the next several weeks. And Zach Moss qualifies for that if he was available because he'll be the starting running back for the Colts. That's week 12, week 13, week 14 at a minimum. I bet he gets week 15 as well.
Oh yeah.
So I'd say realistically, you're talking about that's the first week of the actual playoffs. You know, you would have to. He's somebody I would be looking at depending on who else will have been chopped and be available in the background. This is where it gets weird because even the good teams, everybody's team is good when you get this late in Guillotine. You know what I mean? So it's hard to know who's going to get chopped because it's kind of the variance is a little off, if that makes sense. You end
Right.
up with some decent players that might have just had one bad week getting dumped back into the pool. And that's where it's kind of like, okay, decisions need to start getting made. But as far as general waivers, we'll do quarterback real quick. Quarterback is very short for me. Uh, I was right about Matthew Stafford, so suck it, nerds. I was right about that when we talked about this last week. I was all in on Matthew Stafford as my streaming quarterback, and yeah, I was correct about that. I bring it up only to say this: I am not as excited about Matthew Stafford for the next 2 weeks. Cleveland and then on the road at Baltimore.
Yeah, that's
No,
gonna
thank
be
you. I
tough.
prefer not. However, I will bring something up. Week 15, he plays at home against Washington. Okay, I love that. Uh, week 16 is against the Saints. Okay, that's kind of middle of the road. But
Hmm.
week 17 at the Giants. So if you are still sitting with Matthew Stafford, you might be able to cut him and then just pick him up in the next 2 weeks. If you're only going to hold one quarterback, or if you're going to keep him as your backup, I do like his schedule later on, but I'm not super enthused about it for this week. And this week is rough because of all the buys. Uh, this week is interesting. Don't kill me on this because I've got some names, but it all feels dirty. It just feels so dirty. The things that I'm talking about here. So the names I like for this week, if you need a Band-Aid because your guy is on bye like Lamar, the names that I would encourage people to look at are Gardner Minshew, Will Levis, and Kenny Pickett. And I need a shower. But it's all matchup based because Levis draws the Colts in Tennessee. Minshew, obviously, same side of that game. The Titans suck, so I'd be more than happy to. The volume will be there. And then if you're in a deeper league, Kenny Pickett against Arizona, and it's anybody against Arizona.
Yeah,
is the logic there. So don't crucify me. What do you think, Lance? Who do you like for this week or maybe even this week and beyond?
Jordan Love, he's like right on that bubble. So I mean, he's definitely
I'll allow it.
He's definitely kind of recaptured that early.
He's playing Kansas City this week. You really want to
Yeah.
deal with that?
I mean, I think he could continue to put up the point total that he's been putting up some pretty good points, and I mean they got a good receiving core there in Green Bay. They're not going to be trying to end. They're going to be against Kansas City. They're going to be trying to throw it. So I'd roll the dice with Love. Derek Carr. It's getting tough. I don't love the red zone stuff from him. But yeah, like you said, I think after that you're looking at Will Levis, Kenny Pickett. If you're gonna go that route, you might as well just throw a Hail Mary and go Gardner Minshew. You're either gonna stink or you're gonna light it up. So
yeah, and that's why I came up with the names that I have because I saw a Carr.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with the headache that is Carr, especially because I don't think Olave is playing. Sneak preview for later this week, folks.
Right.
And then I am not super enthused about the idea of playing Love in a game against Kansas City, which could be fine. They could be getting blasted. So I do feel better about Love than I do about Carr. I would say that. So Love is the one that's the most known quantity of them. Because Gardner Minshew could be anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a 40 or it could be a boat. Like it could be anything in between. And Will Levis is kind of a similar thing. Will Levis is all propped up on touchdowns. If he's throwing touchdowns, it's great. If he's not throwing touchdowns, it's really, really, really bad.
Yeah, you got to be real desperate to. I would definitely put him last on the list. I'd do Pickett before I do Levis.
No, I would put Pickett last on the list. Just I won one game and he still had a 12. I don't care. Pickett's only on the list because it's Arizona. If it was any other list, that you wouldn't even be on there. So it's a rough week
because of Arizona and because they fired Matt Canada. So
yes, and it did look a little better. But even with firing Matt Canada, he still only managed 12 points.
Yeah, but
so, Anyway, it's a rough week. Is kind of the point of this little exercise.
Right.
So if you need a streamer, those are the guys that we would kind of direct you to looking at. And then as far as like actual guillotine goes, I mean, it's rough, man. Like Fields is probably available, so it's something to look at, but I just have no confidence in Fields, and you can't use him this week anyway. The only reason that it might matter is that in week 14, when you need it, he plays Detroit. That's not a bad matchup. And then in week 16, he plays the Cardinals. So that's the only argument I could make for Fields at this point because he's been dreadful. But I can't imagine Hurts after his late game heroics. Allen, Mahomes, no, probably not. And Mahomes, for the word of the wise, doesn't really have that great of a playoff schedule. Lamar is on bye, so similar problem, although I would be interested for the haul. Stroud would be the dream. If somehow, some way for Guillotine that the team that had Stroud got chopped, that's what I would pay up for. I want
no
Stroud.
Question.
He has the best playoff schedule. Second choice is Dak.
Yeah.
Dak has an incredible playoff run and has been playing a lot better recently. Herbert might be available. We already kicked off the show talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to be really desperate for Herbert. Like really hurting bad. Talking about like Geno Smith is my freaking quarterback or something. Like, okay, sure. If I've been rolling out like Geno or Russ or Dobbs and Herbert became available after last week, okay, I prefer Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
Purdy, same thing. If Purdy was available, I got to tell you, I'm kind of cooling down on Goff. His schedule is about to get a lot harder. Same thing with Trevor. Trevor Lawrence's schedule is about to get a lot harder than what it's been the last few weeks. Same thing with Sam Howell. His schedule is about to get a lot harder, and their O-line is doo-doo.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last couple that I would really recommend is Kyler. So after Herbert and Purdy, I'd be going all the way down to Kyler. His playoff schedule is actually pretty good, weirdly, and he's been playing well. And then anything after that is literally a crapshoot. Because after that, you're talking about Dobbs, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, people like that. A lot of those guys have really great playoff schedules, but they haven't been playing very well.
Mm-hmm.
Like Russ is interesting in the sense if he was my QB2, I would be okay with it. Geno is kind of the same thing. If I was desperate, I could make it work as my backup. And I would argue that for this year, and I don't know how you feel about it, Lance, but even in Guillotine this year, I want to have two quarterbacks.
Oh yeah.
Feel like I need a backup this year.
With all the injuries that have happened, you definitely do. I mean, they're you know, dropping like flies out there. So yeah, I would definitely not feel comfortable with just rocking with one.
Yeah, I would feel kind of naked just having one, especially going into the playoffs. Like I know it's really popular when people are like, "Oh, I have Mahomes. Why would I need anything else?" And it's like, I know it's a shallow bench in Guillotine, but if something was to happen, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And especially in Guillotine where waivers stops running.
Mm-hmm.
If that happened in week 15, you literally can't fix it.
Yeah.
So you need to have some kind of backup. The question is just what's going to be available. And it's usually pretty easy to solve for this in Guillotine because people have been getting eliminated. And nobody's probably going to like waste spots hoarding quarterbacks. So but I hope that's helpful. We'll go through that next week as well, just one last time as the schedule ticks over one more time for, believe it or not, last waivers. It's crazy to think about that. Moving to running back. We already talked about Zach Moss. I'm really not going to spend any more time on Zach Moss. He's the number one waiver claim in every single conceivable category, from dynasty to guillotine. Blow money on it. I don't normally give that advice, but in this case, I would spend a pretty penny. Like I play in a redraft league where he's available, and I got to go submit my waivers when we're done here. And I have like $112 left of the original $200 that we got to start the year. I'm thinking about putting like $65.
Yeah, it might be the last great waiver claim of this year. So,
and I desperately need a running back. I'm considering putting in because I've got Aaron Jones hurt. I've got Ken Walker hurt. Fortunately, I had Charbonnet, and then my other running back is James Cook, who's on bye this week. In a game, I feel like I have to win.
I'd probably just go all in.
I might do it. Like I'm seriously considering putting every single dollar.
Yeah.
Or maybe not every dollar. Maybe put 100.
At that point, you might as well.
So that way, I might want the $12 just in case I need to pick up an emergency claim. You know what I mean? For like $1. You might want to have $1 or $2.
Yeah.
I don't normally do that, but that's my point. Is like that's the level of waiver claim this is with Zach Moss is blow the stack. In Guillotine, it gets a little more interesting because there are other players that we're going to get into here in a moment, and that's kind of how we'll deal with it. Contractually obligated conversation around Tajay Spears. We don't have to talk about Charbonnet, fortunately, because of the Ken Walker thing. Spears should be rostered in way more leagues than he is for the playoffs. Derrick Henry, I acknowledge he scored 2 touchdowns last week, but you want the handcuff to Henry if you're going to go that route. Is what we've been saying very consistently all year. And Spears is still available in like 60% of leagues. So he's my number 2 choice. And then after that, it gets into like personal preference very, very quickly because I've got a list of names. But after the first 2 guys, I don't really care anymore. It kind of like what floats your boat. So for me, number 3 would be Jeff Wilson. We've talked about how they were bound to get Jeff Wilson more involved in the Dolphins, offense. And it's a little scary with, Achane potentially theoretically coming back. But they paid Wilson all this money to not use him. It just doesn't make sense. So Wilson for me is an interesting choice. And then he'd be my 3rd choice just based on upside. 4th choice is Ty Chandler, even as gross as that game was the other night. Still, that speaks more to how bad the waiver wire list is and less to anything else.
Yeah.
Because my next name that I would have is Roshan. And Roshan doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's all crap. Like, I know people have been trying to talk about Kenny Gainwell. Not interested in that. The only other name that I have that is worth looking at that I think might conceivably be interesting is Samaje Perine.
Yeah.
Been getting more involved the last couple weeks, and he's been successful. So they're rewarding him with more touches. Also, as much as they would love to just give the ball to Javonte Williams on every play, they know that if they do, he'll die. So they've got to give Perine some kind of work here. It's why you brought him in. It's the whole point here. And then the other thing with Perine is this. If I've been riding Williams and it's been working, get Perine. Because Perine and McLaughlin would split that job up. And the Denver playoff schedule, as we already talked about, is very favorable. There's a real chance that Denver is going to make the actual NFL playoffs. That's a real
Which is
thing.
crazy.
That is a real conversation that is happening.
Yeah.
I know a guy who took the under on the Broncos in Vegas in the preseason. Felt great about that up until like 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Then they beat the Vikings, which many people thought was not going to happen. And then they won last week. And it's like, okay, holy crap. I'm like, this is where it makes me, that whole situation makes me chuckle because they fired a couple coaches and they released a couple players and they traded one guy on defense that they could actually get something for. And then they just cut a bunch of people and they won 5 straight games. So I don't want to say like locker room cancer, but I sure am thinking it out loud, very loudly. Oh yeah. Boy, when you win 5 games straight, you do start to understand, like, I guess you were the problem. And I guess maybe Vance Joseph does actually knows what he's doing when it comes to setting up a defense, and people should just listen to him. Because I feel like that's what wasn't happening. Was that a lot of those guys they got rid of were a lot of the long-term Denver veterans that I think weren't willing to program up to the new system.
No.
And they just got rid of them. And then they put in the backups and the younger kids, and the younger kids don't know any better.
Yeah.
So they're just going to listen to what Vance has to say. And as crap as a head coach as he was, it's similar to
McDaniels,
but I was thinking of a different example. The old man.
Fangio.
Fangio.
Yep.
It's similar to that. Don't want him as my head coach. But man, that man knows how to set up a defense. Woo!
Yeah.
Woo! He knows how to do that. His defenses are good. And even now, he's still in the league running defenses. His defense is pretty good. And it's like, Vance Joseph, you never complained about the defense when he was running the Broncos. It's the same thing under Fangio. You never complained about the defense. Defense always worked fine. So it's a rough one out there. But what do you think about? I know we obviously agree on Zach Moss. Where am I wrong? What do you like in terms of kind of figuring out running back here?
So yeah, I have Moss, Spears, obviously, Chandler, and then from there, instead of going into Roshan and P Ryan, I mean,
Yeah,
those are interesting to monitor, but I would pivot more into the handcuff side of it, just because obviously if you make a playoffs, you're
it's
gonna
that
want to
time of
have
year.
yeah, and Dearness Johnson looks like he's kind of carving out a little role for himself with Jacksonville over Tank Bigsby, so I would potentially be interested in that. Keaton Mitchell,
Keaton
46% of the
Mitchell's a good one.
snaps,
That's an interesting one.
and I know they're on bye, but it
Yeah,
would
but that makes
still
it
be
more attractive, not
yeah,
less attractive, because it'll be cheaper.
exactly. So, um,
Also, I was going to bring this up to you. We had talked about the whole Keaton Mitchell. I knew we would get to Keaton Mitchell at some point on the show. And I wanted to bring it up to you specifically. Remember we've been talking about Keaton Mitchell is like, yeah, it's like watching CJ Spiller. He only gets 8
mhm,
touches, but if he scores an 80-yard touchdown, you don't care. But then you see what happens when he doesn't score the long touchdown and he only gets 8 touches. Yo, like that game on Sunday night, that's way more than 8 touches. So that becomes
mhm,
attractive. If they were actually going to
but
give Keaton Mitchell like a real job
mhm.
and take away some of the work from Gus Edwards, yo, that would be attractive.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in him. He stink. I mean, really kind of a long shot, but Rico Dowdle would be
I don't want
another
Rico.
one.
I don't want Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, I know I don't really either, but then again, with all the
I guess
injuries that
that
have
might have something to
happened,
do with the. I don't have many Pollard shares,
yeah,
so
that's kind of really the only thinking behind it. And then Tyler Algier, with Bijan having a little bit better week, maybe might be out there still. So wouldn't hurt to check if you hold Bijan or even if you need someone as a 1 week band-aid. So that's it's not great, but it's something.
yeah. Well, for guillotine purposes, there's there's only so much that you
hmm
got to just be aware that this is the time of year when the good teams are getting eliminated too. So you might have a situation where there's just some good stuff on the waiver wire. It's not as easy as it is during the regular season where it's like, okay, who had a bad week and cratered out? What team cratered out? And what bits of that do I want? This is more like, no, you could score 150 points and still lose type of
hmm
territory. So it gets a little bit muddier. But I think a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, you will want Christian McCaffrey, Etienne, Eckler is debatable. I would still want him, but it's not as much of a slam dunk. Gibbs, Robinson, Kyron Williams, Swift,
Barkley.
Pollard, Jacobs. Barkley's a little lower for me, but yes,
hmm
like uh, there's all these things that you're going to be interested in that are available. Basically, anybody that's in the top 30 or so in you know the ECR for running
hmm
back is gonna be something you want and is of value. It's hard for me to go through every single permutation, right? Because I don't know your league that way. So
hmm
I can do this more easily by here are the things that I'm less interested in than more. The things that I am less interested in is actually
hmm
Barkley because he's a little bit nicked up. The team is bad. He will get volume, so I'm not interested. I am interested, but I'm less interested than others. And it's also because their end of the year schedule is brutal.
hmm
They play to wrap up the season. Uh, Green Bay, New Orleans, Philly, the Rams, Philly again. Coming off the bye this week. So you can't use him this week. And then, by the way, none of those are plus matchups. None of them are plus matchups. So Green Bay is like a neutral matchup, which is fine. The Saints is a little hyperbolic because what Saints team is going to show up that week is always the question. But it makes me nervous around Saquon a little bit. There are other guys that if they were available, I would prioritize a little bit more. The next one that's like that is actually weirdly Javonte Williams. They are going to use him. He's going to get volume, but they also have to be aware of the idea that they can't give him the full banana workload for the whole year or he'll die. Like that's been proven. And his end of season schedule is also not great. Where they play some favorable-ish matchups, but not that favorable. They play Houston this week. Okay, that's okay. Chargers, that's actually not a great matchup for running backs. It's a great matchup for wide receivers. It's not a great matchup for running backs. Detroit, okay, it's kind of neutral. New England has actually been somewhat efficient stopping the run. That's week 16. Chargers again. And then the only plus matchup is in week 18 against the Raiders, and no one cares because that doesn't even factor into this conversation. So Javonte Williams is kind of like not a priority for me. So he's lesser of a priority, I'll say. And then the other one that I have circled, I have two more actually. Because these might be attractive. Mixon. That has to do with schedule, and he will get volume, but the schedule is not great. And I still am not totally sold on the idea that they're going to be able to throw the ball when they need to. And defenses are going to stack the box on Mixon the rest of the way. That's what I would do. I would load the box and make you beat me with Jake Browning. That's what I would do. And I have a feeling that that's probably what most competent NFL teams will do. Moving past that, you're looking at things like James Conner. That's been brutal since we waited all this time for what? Lance? Nothing. You ask me.
Yeah.
Not catching passes, not generating enough touches to really move the needle the way he was at the beginning of the year. So Connor is not something that I want to like get super involved in the rest of the way. And then there are other ones that are like that. I'm just going to treat it this way. Seattle running back. Not great. Not great. Charbonnet clearly needs more time in the incubator before he's going to be ready. That's becoming pretty obvious. And he's really been impressing me more as a pass catcher than as an actual running back. Because him trying to run between the tackles has not been going well.
Doesn't work. No.
But he does catch the passes very nicely.
Yeah.
But Ken Walker is beat to hell, and frankly has been hurt all year and has been not efficient. And then the last one is one that you probably can't do much about, but you might want to note it. Brian Robinson has some really brutal games down the stretch. Games that I'm expecting them to be getting their crap beaten out of them. Like, for example, Brian Robinson this week draws Miami. Okay, on paper, that's a really good matchup because Miami's run defense isn't good. That only matters if Washington isn't losing by 3 touchdowns in the second quarter. And then he's on bye. And then it's from there, it's Rams, Jets, Niners the rest of the way. None of that is good. So, like that, Robinson is a scary one. So those are the names that I would tell you that I am less interested in. If I am desperate at running back, you got to do what you got to do, depending on what's available on the wire. But if any of those names in your guillotine are available, I am putting in a lesser bid. And in some cases, if I didn't need it, I might forego it entirely. And I would rather focus on some other names this week and next week as they get eliminated. So what do you think, Lance? Is there anybody that you're particularly high or low on? Or do you take issue with anything I just said?
No, I think you covered it pretty good. I mean, obviously, James Conner and, he's really, that whole Arizona team has been tanking, but been tanking in such a sneaky way where it feels like they're more competitive than they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not immediately obvious how bad they are until you actually watch the games. And it's like,
God. Yeah, even with Kyler back, I mean, they had Dobbs in there, and Dobbs was doing his thing. But no, obviously, like you said, there's obviously your cream of the crop with McCaffrey, Pollard, um, Jacobs, but then after that, there's a big chunk where it's just kind of a you're getting into people where you're going to be debating whether it's going to be matchup based. It's pretty much
Right.
what I'm trying to say.
And that's the hard part about Guillotine is you're basically making these decisions now, and you have to live with them for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. No,
So that's where
exactly.
this little exercise becomes important because you need to actually go through and figure out, like, okay, I'm not even going to get the chance to undo this on waivers. This is my roster. It is locked to me.
Right.
So this is what we're doing. So you got to have backups. You got to have depth because you're going to have to basically be able to form a legit roster for the remainder of the season. And what's equally frustrating is that we still have buys for this week and next week. So you also have to juxtapose that against not getting freaking chopped right at the
there's
goal.
buys next week too?
Yeah. Cardinals and Steelers are on bye next week.
Are you? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, this is why I was saying I don't know why they did 6 teams this week and not just 4 and 4. But whatever, man. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I said Steelers. I meant Washington. I meant Commanders. Yeah, it's Arizona and Washington are on bye next week.
Jesus.
You tell me. You figure it out. I don't know. Like, why wouldn't you just do, like, if you were adamant that you wanted all the teams playing on Thanksgiving, why would you do 6 and 2?
Yeah,
there's got to be a reason.
Yeah.
There's no way that there's not some sort of reason for that. I would love to know what it is.
Yeah, that's fair, because I can't remember that in recent memory of them doing anything close
It
to
has to be
resembling that at all.
schedule related and flights or something, or like it's got to be. It's the only thing that I could think of. Is there anybody that you're super excited if they got chopped? Like Kyron Williams, for example, has been kind of a hot topic. Are you expecting that to be like? Are you expecting him to stay at that pace for the rest of the way? I don't know that you could justify saying he's going to have 40 every week.
I don't think he's going to have 40 every week, but I definitely think they're probably going to give him more than at least 15 touches a game, probably closer to 20. And that's just because of Matt Stafford's injury history. Cooper Kupp might be still a little banged up here.
Oh, I think that's pretty apparent is that Cooper Kupp is not playing at 100%. And also Puka, everybody's favorite waiver wire darling, Puka Nacua, has not been 100% in weeks. And he guts it out. They both are out there gutting it out as best they can, but they are not at full, power. Whereas Kyron, he actually did look fully healthy, especially getting the extra week with the bye. He was probably able to play last week from what all the reports were, and then they got the bye at the right time, so he got an extra week off. He looked good. He looked strong.
Right.
He fresh legs. Definitely had fresh legs.
Oh,
it's like okay, that definitely helps. So he's on my list of like, I know certain people are kind of poo-pooing this because they don't believe in it, and I'm like, based on what I've seen to this point, I feel like we'll deal with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua next year and figuring out how to rank that. That's not my problem for right now.
Yeah. And I mean, he's getting work in the passing game too, so that always looks nice. And aside from, I would just be, if you're going to take from one of these teams that has a backfield committee, I would definitely make sure you're at least getting your 2 locked into your guillotine before, it cuts off, because otherwise it could be a world of hurt, because Buffalo is the one that just feels like it's going to cave in on itself. I feel like Leonard Fournette's going to come back in there or get in there, and then Latavius Murray is, still going to chip away, and
I don't
James
know.
Cook is
The longer this goes, the more I'm convinced that they might just go with Cook because he's had a brutal week 3 weeks ago, but then the last 2 games he's looked great.
He has.
And it's like I feel like they also, when they changed play callers, that's when you would have seen the shift in personnel, and it didn't happen. So that's where I'm sitting there like, no, Cook might actually be safe. And then Fournette has yet to get on the field.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm dubious of this now because he's still sitting on the practice squad. And at some point, I acknowledge they will probably have to make a change. But what are you going to do? You going to guess on that proactively?
Yeah.
Because they're not playing this week, so we get nothing. But yeah, that team is definitely falling apart.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly more than Buffalo as a team. Just kind of, you don't know what you're gonna get from them, so I think that probably factors into the whole James Cook thing more than anything. I mean,
I wouldn't cut him.
I don't think I would cut him.
You'd have to be so loaded at running back to be talking about cutting Cook that this year that I don't know that it's even realistic.
Right. But if he's on the wire, I guess I would just temper my expectations.
If he's on the wire, that's a little bit of a different thing. My expectation for Cook is that he's a very low-end RB2, very high-end RB3.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No,
that's
you put him right there.
Where I'm at. Like,
you put him right there.
I would bid on it accordingly. Don't assume that just because he had 2 good games that they're going to come back and feature him, and because there's a lot of issues that are happening in the background with that. So yeah, you have issues like that for sure. The other one that's, if you're going with committees, the other one that's interesting to monitor is just the Dolphins mess, because you've got Mostert, who's not playing at 100%, and I'm actually amazed he hasn't been more hurt historically. Not to be a huge dick about it, but historically, by this time of the year, Mostert's already hurt.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's continuing to play is actually kind of interesting, but I can tell they're playing with his workload because he's clearly nursing something. And he could go out and play, but he can't carry the load. So they're going to start getting Jeff Wilson more involved. And then how do you juxtapose how that's going to work when Achane eventually comes back?
Yeah.
Because I don't know that there's enough to feed 3 of them. Someone's going to get left out in the cold, and I couldn't tell you who it is at this point. It's just it's going to be whoever's hurt, honestly.
Yeah. Especially when you still have to feed Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Like,
yeah, and
it's not going to be enough to go around.
Right. You're not, and you're not going to just run the ball for no reason. So it's like that's going to be interesting to see how that goes the rest of the way. So, but okay, all right. We'll do wide receiver. Wide receiver is deeper, but it's still really nasty. For me, I'm going back to the well because I get to keep talking about it, and I just keep being right about it. Jayden Reed, number 1. Don't know why people continue to let this be a thing where he's just sitting out there on the wire, putting up crazy points. The man is getting carries, for Christ's sake, Lance. What more do you need? Like, he's got back-to-back 20s and a 15 in PPR. Like I don't know what more you got to do here. He hasn't had a really bad game since week 9 when he against the Rams when he had a 7. And that's hard for me to that's 3 games after that he's had I'll put it to you this way. In 5 of his last 6 games, he's put up double-digit points in PPR. 2 of those are 20s. So I'm not sitting here saying mortgage my whole future or anything here, but he got 8 targets last week. I know he only had 15 points, but he got 8 targets and he scored.
Well, yeah, and I mean he did have the drop, which kind of stinks, but aside from that,
he's a rookie.
3 of them, yeah, and 3 of them weren't really catchable. So he's doing good. He's getting more work every single week. And I mean, Dobbs is clearly their one, but I would say Jaden Reed's definitely carved out a role as their two.
I
I
think Jaden
mean,
Reed is Jaden Reed has officially done what I expected him to do in the preseason,
mhm,
or I should say, uh, since he was drafted. My
mhm,
expectation for Reed was that it would take a while, but eventually he would carve out a role as the true full-time number 2 on the Packers, because that is what they drafted him to do. And when you break it down profile-wise, he is the perfect player for them for what they do.
mhm.
It was a very good draft pick, as much as I hate the Packers, and
Oh
I
yeah.
do. As much as I hate the Packers, I credit where credit is due. That was smart, because you got
Mhm,
a guy. You didn't even have to put a first round on it. You know what I mean? And you got a
mhm,
guy who profiles. He basically played in college the system that you run now in the pros. It's the same system. And positionally, he's perfect as like the flanker for what they need. And he's young, and he's malleable, and he's faster than he gets credit for, and he's good at running. I should say with the ball in his hand from a carries perspective. He's not
mhm,
just a wide receiver in the old school traditional sense. Like, got to go run routes. No, he does some of the modern wide receiver things like jet sweeps and direct snaps, and he's got some ability there as well. So it's like, no, he's good. So he's my number 1, and then there's a bit of a drop, honestly, after that. It's like a gap. Uh Demario Douglas is still interesting when healthy. Uh he as long as he can stay healthy, he's kind of the only Patriot that I want. Because he's picking up where Kendrick Bourne left off. So Douglas is my second choice as a particularly, by the way, for Reed and Douglas, particularly in like keeper and dynasty leagues, if these things are available. Um, they should not be. They definitely should not be. I'm not. And then my next couple are kind of interesting because it's it's rough. But weirdly, it's Josh Palmer. And I know people would be like, Neil, Josh Palmer is on IR. Stop sniffing glue before you get on the radio. I know he's on IR. He's not going to be on IR for the remainder of the year. And when he comes back, he's too valuable to just leave out there,
mhm.
especially if my league has IR slots, for example. I will cut something and IR Josh Palmer depending on what I'm holding in my IR. If there's nothing in my IR slot, then this is easy. I want to hold Josh Palmer for the end of the year, uh, because basically when he gets back, I'm expecting him to go back to what the old pace was, which is high end wide receiver 3
Mhm.
with upside for low end wide receiver 2, because Quentin Johnson is now beat up again.
But
Jalen Guyton is beat up.
Quentin Johnson healthy doesn't matter. I mean, he's gonna beat him out regardless. He beat him out before, and
Yeah, he already
he's
did that.
gonna
But my point is,
come back.
it's becoming necessity.
Yeah.
It's becoming like I don't even have the luxury of playing some of my other guys because they're all hurt.
Mhm. Right.
So yeah, it's for me, it's Reed and Douglas are the two young guns that, similar to like the running back conversation we've had all year. Those are the guys that should be being rostered.
Mhm.
And then after that, yeah, it's Palmer, and then it gets kind of muddy after that. So the Palmer thing, he goes into like almost like a tier by himself because he's kind of like a long-term stash. After that, everybody else is like short-term band-aid mode,
Yeah.
where it's like Noah Brown, if he was ever healthy, might be interesting. Hard for me to really want to recommend rostering Noah Brown right now when he's missed the last 3 games due to injury. Curtis Samuel is also similar. Okay. I acknowledge he had a 20 last week. Look at his game log from before that. Like, everybody's like, oh, Curtis Samuel. Like, fantasy zombie, 3-time fantasy zombie, actually, Curtis Samuel. You should get a trophy for that. It's incredible. It's like most people can't even do it once. He's done it 3 times. It's amazing. I've watched people bury Curtis Samuel for real. I wish I had the years available to me off the top of my head, but for real, 3 times I've seen them hold the funeral for Curtis Samuel, and he just keeps getting out of the grave. He just comes back, and it's like he's not. It's like it's a better analogy. It's like Jason Voorhees.
Oh yeah.
It's like they killed Jason like 3 times in those movies. He just keeps coming back. Like, so no, he's a matchup dependent guy that does possess a certain level of upside, but man, I would have to be so desperate. And then you getting into things like I'm so sad about this. Rashid Shaheed. I was excited to see him get a shot to be the wide receiver 2 for the Saints. Finally, to be the wide receiver 2 for the Saints. Immediately done for the day.
Yep.
Like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even get through the first half. Immediately done for the day. So and he's got and it's a quad, so he's probably not playing this week at all.
Mm-hmm.
I am disappointed. Just straight up disappointed. So disappointed. Had big things in mind for that. Had a whole segment planned. It's gonna be great. No, but he's a name to know that I would continue to monitor if he was ever healthy, because Michael Thomas isn't coming back. But we're running out of weeks here, Lance, for this to matter. And then the last one that I'm interested in a real way is, and it makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit, but Odell Beckham Jr. Sorry. Tamp it down. So gross. 3 double-digit games in a row. I acknowledge he had a 6 against the Chargers in a game that they didn't need. They didn't need Odell Beckham Jr. to win that game. That was the problem with that game. And that's also, by the way, the problem with Odell Beckham Jr. is when they need him, it's just there's no consistency to it.
No.
He'll be there if they need a big play, but I'm not very excited about rostering him. I know some people are, but I'm good to let somebody else have it. But that's why he's the last name on my list. So I'm sure you have some different names than that, and probably a different order. We probably agree. If I had to hazard a guess before your turn, I would bet we agree on Jaden Reed being the number 1 wide receiver claim. Anything past that, I'd be speculating.
We do, but I almost want to put Josh Palmer as one.
Okay.
Just because I feel that's, if both are healthy, it'd be Josh Palmer hands down. But because
if you were in okay, I see what you're saying. In a theoretical week, like week 14 or 15 or something, both Reed and Palmer are available on your bench and you need one of them.
Yeah.
You would probably play Palmer over Reed. I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, I'd feel more confident about Palmer.
It would depend on the specific matchup, but I don't necessarily disagree with you in a vacuum.
Right. After that, I want nothing to do with the Patriots. I know Demario Douglas is getting targets, but I was wrong about Mac Jones. I was wrong about the whole everything with
Look, I wasn't going to call attention to that. I wasn't going to call attention to it. Okay.
I want it to be like, I'm not even a Patriots fan, and I just want it. Looking at the Patriots play right now just makes me sad. So that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to.
I wasn't going to call attention to your takes from earlier this year. I was just going to let that go. But since you brought it up,
he's like Justin Fields, where I feel he just needs a change of scenery to find out what he truly is. Because just like Fields, he's been through so many different people in his fucking ear calling bullshit. So, Fields has had Nagy and the fucking Cleveland game. He tried to get him killed.
No, it's not. It's not Nagy. It's fucking Nagy. That's how you.
Yeah, fucking Nagy. And then we have Getsy, who Next Gen Stats proves my point. They threw it 17 times of 27, at or behind the line of scrimmage with fucking screens. And like people
Yeah.
knew that they were doing that in the preseason and it worked once. And so now
Well, it
you're like
usually
that.
will. It's like Madden. It usually will work
You're
once.
like, yeah, he's like the kid who's playing Madden and just calls the same shit over
The
and
same
over and
screenplay too,
over
and it's like,
and
dude, you can't
over.
just run screens.
I
Screens
know.
have a designed purpose, which
Yeah.
is it's designed as a piece of misdirection
Hmm.
because you've been pushing the ball.
Yeah, and I
Then you
get
can't
it.
just run
You know,
screens over and over and over again.
Flores blitzes most, and over 50%. But like, dude. And then you have Josh McDaniels, you have the Frankenstein, Matt Patricia, and Joe Judge, and now you have fucking Bill O'Brien with Mac
Yeah, which is
Jones. Like
not better.
both of them. And I don't know if I've said this already. When are we going to start talking about Matt Patricia and Joe Judge for co-coaches of the year for how competent they made that Patriots offense look last year? But
Right, right.
like I said, done talking about the Patriots. Both of them need a change of scenery in order to flourish, or at least to put a nail in the coffin for what they are.
Mac Jones needs to go wear a baseball hat, carry a clipboard for a while.
Probably good. Curtis Samuel, don't care. Uh, Noah Brown, Khalil Shakir, Rashid Shaheed, OBJ, all kind of in the same tier of you're flexing them and you probably don't feel great about it.
You're
And
sacrificing goats, hoping that something goes your way and they
yeah,
catch a deep ball or something crazy happens. They are very
exactly.
much all in that mold
Yeah.
of player.
And then the final one I can bring attention to, and you probably already know who it is, Elijah Moore. And I get Cleveland's.
The mystery box all year.
Yeah, but the one thing is since they traded Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's had 7 targets, and this past week he had 9 targets. Now,
Yeah, well, that also helped when Amari Cooper got body slammed and looked like it really hurt.
yeah,
Like
that
legitimately, really, really hurt. The
is it. Just
Broncos in that game were throwing haymakers that,
they've been
like,
doing that a lot
I
since,
know that's what they do. It's crazy to watch. Like, that's why players keep getting suspended off the Broncos, and I'm like, well, yeah,
and
you're
it's like,
playing with this incredible reckless abandon that I don't think is actually legal.
well, and it's kind of weird for me because it gives me flashbacks to the whole Bounty Gate thing, and I can't remember who was the head coach of the Saints. Oh yeah, that's right, it was Sean
Greg,
Payton.
with Sean Payton, yeah, it was Sean,
Greg
yeah.
Williams. Greg
Yep.
Williams took the fall for
Yeah.
Sean
Well, you remember
Payton's
when Greg
team.
Williams showed up wearing a fake beard back to the sidelines after he got suspended because they wouldn't run? God, Jesus. Oh my God.
There's
But
a
yeah.
certain amount. There's a certain amount I appreciate Greg Williams. Like if you're gonna be that, then be that. Don't try to act
Oh,
like you're
he's very
something else.
consistently a POS.
Yeah, and it's like
Like, he's not different on any other
no.
day. He's just a POS.
And for a sense, I feel Sean Payton just tries to walk around it or hide it or avoid it, and it's like, no, dude, like you are what you are. Now it's Nick Sirianni. Everyone's ganging up on, but before there was Nick Sirianni, there was Sean Payton, and
oh,
everyone could not.
you don't live here. Sean Payton was getting crucified
Yeah.
for weeks out here because
Oh yeah.
he talked a lot of crap
Oh
in
yeah.
the preseason.
Oh
He
yeah.
was
The
running his mouth all preseason,
bucket
and
hats, the Nathaniel Hackett shit.
and
Yeah.
then losing to the Nathaniel Hackett team, that
Yep.
didn't look good. Like, he ran his mouth all summer,
Hmm.
and people were about ready to like pull the plug on him a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
where there were rumblings that if he didn't win that game,
He was gone.
it was the first game they
Yeah.
won. Yeah, they were just gonna
No,
fire him.
that was a very real thing. It was like
Like,
I
he
think
was
the
gonna be gone.
odds for him to be the first head coach fired
They
were
went up
actually,
dramatically.
yeah,
Somehow
they're
Brandon
pretty
Staley is still employed. I still can't figure that out. But
good.
I didn't have Frank Reich being the first coach being fired, although I should have because it's David Tepper, and David Tepper always fires coaches.
Well,
Should
and
have thought of that.
he got fired last year in Indy, and it was like, dude, like, why? Like he's been dealt the shittiest hand throughout his
Yeah,
entire
my theory
career.
is that he might actually not be that easy to work with. Like he might be kind of a dick.
Yeah, maybe.
And that always gets you fired faster.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who I work with and know, like, who are dicks, who are gainfully employed.
Yeah.
But they do good work and succeed. Trust me, if those people were not successful and they were still dicks like that, yeah, they'd be fired pretty much immediately. Like, so that's just a little life lesson, right? It's just something
Right.
people learn as they get older. It's like,
Don't be a
oh,
dick.
yeah, well, if you're gonna be a dick, you better be really, really, really successful. Like, you can be a dick,
Yeah.
but you gotta produce.
Yeah.
And then it's fine. Then people put up with
Easiest advice is just don't be a dick.
it. Yes, that is the general advice.
One day you're not going to be able to produce.
Yeah, the
And
general advice is
yeah.
don't be a dick because
Yeah.
people will remember how you treated them.
Yeah.
And also when people don't like you because you're a dick, they'll start looking for reasons to get rid of you.
Yep.
But there are search situations where I do understand why some people are dicks because they've kind of earned it. And it's like, but that person is not Frank Reich. Like, no. Frank Reich does not have the numerous Super Bowl rings that you would need to have in that line of work to be that big of a dick.
Yeah.
And for people to put up with it. If that's in fact what is going on. And I do not know that to be a fact. I just am speculating a little bit there, but that's my theory. That's my working theory. Or it could also be that just as simple as David Tepper fires coaches. And he's fired on average like a coach a year. Because you go look at his other sports teams that he owns too. It's the same thing. He fires coaches all the time. So it's one of those deals. David Tepper also does not appear to be a very easy man to get along with, by the way.
I liked how they came out and started talking about, the initial plan was to draft CJ Stroud, but But then we were in a room and it was unanimous. It's like you were digging.
That's
you're not helping.
That's not a productive conversation.
No.
Let me put it this way, Lance. If that was true, Batman couldn't get that information out of me.
Yeah.
Like Batman could have me tied to a chair and I'd be like, I ain't saying nothing. Like I take that information to my grave.
Yeah.
Or maybe I wait 10 years and write a book.
Yeah.
Like I am not doing this on camera at a press conference the way he seems to want to. But I don't know if you know anything about David Tepper and how he made his money, but not a nice guy. He made his money as a venture capitalist. I don't know if you've ever worked with venture capitalists at any level, but I certainly have. There's a theme when you deal with those people. Definitely attracts a certain personality to be successful at that line of work. So yeah, you got Tepper, but yeah, let me put it this way: wide receiver waivers is just such a tire fire because what are on this list are you actually excited about, or at any level are you excited about? Elijah Moore, maybe in the right circumstances. What annoys me about that is it's still DTR.
Well, and he's getting carries, but he also lost a fumble, so it's like, okay, well, that kind of stinks for them trying to give you the ball when you have Ford, you have Hunt, you have Strong, so and it's DTR. Like, and even when it was Watson, it wasn't great. So
no, it wasn't.
Worst quarterback play is not going to help that any.
Yeah, so I'm not super interested in like hitching my wagon to that star. The one that I'm actually surprised that neither one of us brought up is Jalen Hyatt because he had the good game, but I am just not sold on that as an idea.
That's that's a flash in the pan, I feel, because I if I'm going to count on my player success being directly linked to Tommy DeVito.
Tommy.
As fun as this is, if I got money on it, I'm not doing it.
Tommy, you should have never played for the Giants, Tommy. Your father tried to tell you to play for the Jets, Tommy.
Oh yeah.
Never should have played for the Giants, Tommy. You're breaking your father's heart, Tommy. And then seeing his family in the stands on Sunday and realizing that they are every bit as stereotypical as I imagined them to be is just.
And then just like the whole tailgating thing of everyone.
It's like my favorite thing in football at the moment because I hate everything. Just the whole Tommy DeVito saga and his family is just so stupidly entertaining. God, just give. I would like Tommy DeVito's father mic'd up in the stands, please. And I am willing to. I that's what I want. I want his father mic'd up, and I want him being fed beers the entire time.
It's probably that would be the most intriguing thing about a Giants game.
It'd be great. I'd love it. Like, get him a microphone and a bunch of beers, and just set him up in the stands and let him just go ham. Because I bet you that guy is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
I bet you that guy starts drinking at like 5 o'clock in the morning and is like drinking all night. Like just looking at him and looking at the tailgating thing and just what a thing that is.
Well, and it's New York, so the fan. I mean, and he's not in the suite; he's in the stands.
No, he's in the stands, like the actual
I
stands with everybody else.
You, New York, there's fans talking shit to him about his.
Oh yeah,
just to hear those clapbacks from him, I would. Die for like that.
Oh yeah, just the whole. And I heard him talk, and I'm like, that is exactly what I imagined. That is exactly what I expected you to sound like, and I love it. Like, no notes, please make more. Like I really don't think Tommy DeVito has a future in the NFL, if I'm being honest. Sorry, but his father as a color analyst, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
His father is a color analyst, absolutely. I want him to be sponsored by Fireball. That man should absolutely be sponsored by Fireball, possibly Firehouse Subs, and that might be too national. We might have to go something more regional, like some regional cheesesteak thing in like New York or some regional Italian restaurant. That man should be sponsored, and they should give him a microphone and just start feeding him drinks and letting that go. And don't put it on the national broadcast because you'll never get it aired. But do like they do with like the Manning cast. Put it on like the dirty part of the NFL. The people. Put it on like the dirty part. Like team that guy up with like I was gonna say what's his name, but then he went mainstream.
McAfee.
Yeah, put him on with McAfee, but then McAfee went mainstream, so they couldn't do McAfee anymore.
Yeah.
But I would just love that guy just by himself, mic'd up in the stands, talking to people. It might only have a very short shelf life of like 3 weeks, but man, those 3 weeks would be hysterical.
3 weeks before he gets in a fight with someone and gets
banned. or people lose interest, or I'd rank it in the following order: fist fight. People just lose interest because it's not as funny as I imagine it after the idea doesn't have legs. You know what I mean? Or the league realizes what a terrible idea this is and shuts it down. That is, I'm messaging that way because that accounts for the idea that he would just inevitably say something hideously racist. Because that's like, you could do that separately and just have that as one of the categories, like just racist comment, just ends it, like super racist, like comment. I've seen that I've heard that man speak, and I've seen, like, I have a feeling that when they had him on camera briefly the one time, they were like, okay, this guy for real cannot be on air for more than like 12 seconds. Because if it's anything longer than that, we're gonna have to, like, there's somebody sitting there like with their hand over the don't button, like, okay, no, like, no, like putting somebody's drunk father on there. So anyway, yeah, that's been my favorite thing that I've been doing for people, where it's just every time I see Tommy DeVito, that's immediately what pops into my head. Also, two of my best friends who live out here in Denver are originally from Jersey.
Oh wow!
And they're huge Giants fans.
Yeah.
And they don't know anything about football, but I had to explain to them recently that the new quarterback for the Giants, these people do not watch football. They're from Jersey. They're second generation immigrants. Like, I'm sorry, their parents are from Poland who emigrated here. They are like first generation US citizens.
Okay.
They don't watch football at those people's house, okay? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's no
Yeah.
that's not a thing. But they're originally from Jersey. So they remember watching the Giants during the Eli Manning days. So they love the Giants, but I had to explain to them that the new quarterback for the Giants is a guy named Tommy DeVito, whose dad is super Italian, and he's out there and he's trying his best. And they're just like, oh my God, I love this idea. So they've started watching Giants games just based on the idea that it's Tommy DeVito. And that's who I'm watching the games with a lot of the time when we're doing something. And I'll be like, you're breaking your father's heart, Tommy. You can't take a sack there, Tommy. You should have stayed home and run the family business. But no, you had to go play for the Giants like a big shot. And now you embarrassed everybody. And it's like, and what's messed up is I didn't know anything about Tommy DeVito or his father before I started doing that. And the fact that that is that shockingly accurate is amazing. It's an amazing thing because that's basically what it is. It's like,
Oh yeah.
it's phenomenal. Anyway, we'll do guillotine for waivers real quick, and tight end always takes 2 seconds. So let's wrap up here. Guillotine for guillotine waivers, it's kind of the same thing. There's certain names that I know that I'm looking at that I'm not super interested in. If they were available, I might not have better choices, so I might want to bid on them. But let's temper our expectations. Number one, Stephon Diggs. Do I really need to go through the whole saga of the Bills? I don't think I do.
No.
Number two, Justin Jefferson. Don't even know who the quarterback is. Haven't seen that guy play in forever. If it's available, maybe okay, but I'm not happy. Jalen Waddle. Believe it or not, the Dolphins' end of season schedule is brutal for a wide receiver. Brutal. So you're not going to sit Tyreek Hill ever. But when we get to the playoffs, Waddle has two good matchups this week and next week. But in week 15 for the start of the playoffs, so he plays in order for the end of the year, it's Washington and Tennessee. Okay, love it. But then for the playoffs, Jets, Cowboys, Ravens. Woof. Woof. So I would be tempering my expectations for Waddle. I don't think you can do much with Tyreek Hill. I mean, you're starting that if it's available, you're rostering it, right? Like there's no. For moving on, Metcalf actually has very little to do with DK Metcalf and everything to do with Geno Smith not taking chances with the football and playing in utter game manager mode and being really hideously depressing. The next name I had was Terry McLaurin. That one hurts because I love Scary Terry. He's one of my favorite players, and I'm a known Scary Terry apologist. But it's just not happening right now. And the Commanders' schedule for the end of the year is a disaster. It's really bad. C. Robinson, Brian. And then I have two more, and these are a little bit less. One is Rashee Rice. There's no consistency to that. And their schedule at the end of the year is not favorable. You really don't want to be banking on Rashee Rice having a huge end of the year. It's not as bad as some of the other schedules that I listed, but it's bad. And then the last one is Jordan Addison, and that one also hurts because I love Jordan Addison. And it's hard to want to talk about not being super excited about a guy who got 10 targets last night. But Jefferson's coming back. We don't know who the quarterback is. And their end of the year schedule for wide receivers is not good. So those are kind of the ones that I'm looking at that I'm like, if they're out there, I might not have better choices. So, okay. But if I can avoid it, I would probably rather avoid it than roster it. What about you, Lance? Is there anybody that you're like super high or low on? Anybody you really want to shout out or specifically say to stay away from?
The one that's kind of coming back together as of recent that I would probably shy away from is Calvin Ridley.
Okay.
He had a brutal start prior to the bye, like just did not look anything like the player we've seen prior.
24, 5, 7, 12, 21, 7, 2.
Yeah, like very
That's
much
that's not
up
what you
and
wanted.
no. And since the bye, like he's looked better. Um I just you've seen this Jaguars offense struggle. They have a really tough schedule to end the year. You got Cincinnati, which is whatever, but then you got Cleveland, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Carolina's okay, but just with what you've seen from him early on, like I would not feel confident in that at all. Um, You said to temper expectations for Jalen Waddle. I would probably temper expectations for Devonta Smith because we know every single time that AJ Brown does not get the ball, he is going to protest until he gets the ball.
As he
And the
should.
past 2 weeks,
As he
Devonta,
should, by the way. That is a correct
yeah,
thing for him to be doing.
yeah,
I would do I would do the same thing if I was AJ
mhm,
Brown. If I was that talented.
yeah. But I mean, there's times to like if you're winning,
I don't
like
I don't think he's going to say too much about that game 2 weeks ago that was super brutal where they were
yeah,
playing the Chiefs in the rain and the
hmm
Chiefs literally decided, "Okay, you're going to beat me with somebody that isn't AJ Brown."
right,
And then they did. And then last week it looked like a lot of a similar thing from the Bills.
hmm
You're going to try and beat me with anybody that isn't AJ Brown, except the Bills secondary isn't good enough to do that.
right.
So Brown actually did get the ball a fair amount last week.
No, he did. Devonta Smith, though, I would be a little hesitant on just for the simple fact of you got AJ Brown chirping for the ball on the other side of him. They
Goddard's probably
play
coming back. It looks like they never actually IR'd him. He's probably coming back this year at some point. That makes that a mess.
they play the Niners this week, and from there it's just kind of rough. At this point, your Steelers wide receivers, like you got rid of Matt Canada. That's not going to solve all your problems. I feel like Freiermuth is going to become a thing, and we'll get to that in a second. But Pickens, I don't know, and Deontay Johnson walking by a fumble. Like, I mean, at this
Uh,
point, I don't know what to what because you had George Pickens tweeting and doing all kinds of crazy shit like 3 weeks ago, and now you have Deontay Johnson just doing that with like no effort. But I still can't confidently say Tomlin will put him on a bench or Tomlin will, cut him because the dude can put up with a lot. I mean, if anyone's a saint in the NFL, it's Mike Tomlin because he has dealt with probably the wildest receiver room in the
yeah, for
history
a
of
long
the
time.
NFL.
It's been going
Like,
on for a long time.
yeah. So if anyone knows how to keep money even keel, it's Mike Tomlin. But for either of these players, especially when you've had Kenny Pickett and you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for something to kind of work there, I would maybe shy away from them just because their schedule isn't great. The dynamic there is just weird, and yeah, I just don't see the upside in trying to bank on one of them. So and that's pretty much what I got for wide receiver.
All right, then tight end, and then we'll call it a day here, and then we'll see you on
Hmm
Tuesday for the final making the cut of the year. I can't believe it's already gone by.
Mm.
But then Lance will be joining us on Thursdays for Roster the People. So bring all your lineup questions to that. And then Jason will do waivers. They'll do the wire on Monday. So we're just going to kind of consolidate shows a little bit because we already have 2 shows where we set people's lineup, including the final countdown on Sundays. So we're not going to do lineup setting on Tuesdays. It's not productive. So we'll just do Thursdays. But the tight end is super easy. It's Pat Fryermuth. It's Isaiah Likely. And then those are the 2 that you feel good about. Likely on bye this week, so that's not great. But they like him. They used him how I expected that they would on Monday, where they design a couple plays for him, and they have him run some screens, and he has a tendency to be able to get open. Lamar trusts him fine, but the real star is Pat Fryermuth. That was the big. You already alluded to it. That was the big monumental change after firing Matt Canada. Was suddenly Pat Fryermuth is getting involved all over the field, especially over the middle of the field, and that's the old Steelers offense that I remember. Where I'm like, wait, this is the offense from like 2 years ago, where they're trying to keep Pickett from getting killed and trying to keep Pickett from turning the ball over. So they just have Fryermuth run out into the middle of the field and turn around.
Mm-hmm.
And what's messed up is it works. Because Fryermuth, when he's healthy, is a large man that is hard to tackle. And he's not that slow. I mean, he's pretty slow, but he's not that slow. So it's like Fryermuth is interesting to me. He's the number 1 tight end waiver claim, and it is not close.
No.
The next candidate is Likely, but because of the bye and because of the fact that he doesn't possess the same upside as Fryermuth, he's firmly at 2. And then after that, it gets into personal preferences on stuff. For me, the third choice would be probably Cade Otton, because whenever Baker gets stuck, that's who he goes to, is Cade Otton. So he sees a lot of targets that way. I know some folks would recommend Juwan Johnson. It's not that out of the realm of possibility. He'd be in the same rough tier as Cade Otton. Be okay with it. Doesn't light it up for me. And then the last one is actually Tyler Conklin. And that's weird because it's a Jet, not named Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall. But if you go back and look at Conklin for the season, he has been pretty freaking consistent. And believe it or not, he's the tight end 16.
Yeah.
And he has been weirdly consistent. And it's something that if I had to put a gun to my head and pick a name, like down in that, like, you're streaming tight end and you're past like 15, yeah, Conklin would probably end up being the choice most weeks.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of the rare tight ends also that could get you 10 points without having to score.
He's definitely one that if you're playing standard and not half PPR or like PPR, he's definitely not an option. But
yeah,
dude just gets targets, catches passes, and goes down. Like, he hasn't gone over 70 yards this season, but yet still is putting up points. So
yeah, he catches the pass and then falls over and then is like, oh, okay. So
it's Jason Witten style. So
old Stumpy.
Yep.
Jason Witten. That's what I used to tell Steve. That's the joke Steve and I used to make, where I used to constantly say to him, it's Jason Witten out there running around on his bloody stumps because he had no legs left by the end. And it was just constant leg injury after leg injury, but he played the NFL for 1,000,000 years. And he had leg injuries from Tennessee. But yeah, it's a short list, right? And then
it's those 3.
It's those 3, and then if you're desperate, Cade Otton would be my choice. I am not interested very much in Juwan Johnson. I know some people are. It's not really floating my boat. And then tight end, I'm going to go back to my argument of tight end literally does not matter unless Travis Kelce is available, because that is pretty much correct.
Yeah.
So we'll do that one last time, and then the things that I don't want. And this is a very short list because the rest of it is very much cookie cutter. Like, for example, like Hawkinson is held hostage by whatever his quarterback situation is. So is Kittle in a lot of ways. Who else is healthy? When they're all healthy, they use Kittle to block to help Purdy. And I would do the same thing because Kittle is really good at blocking, weirdly. That guy's actually just kind of really good at everything. Kincaid and Laporta are fine. McBride is fine. Schultz is fine. Ferguson is fine. The people I don't want are Evan Ingram, because as you already mentioned it, their schedule gets way harder here in a second. So I really want to avoid Evan Ingram, and then Logan Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of hard because Logan Thomas has been a streamer all year. But Washington's schedule is brutal at the end of the year this year for whatever reason. So if you've noticed a theme of today, I'm basically fading the Commanders the closer we get to the playoffs. And it's definitely been a recurring theme. You kind of want to fade the Commanders, and I think we would probably agree. You might not be able to fade all of your Jags, but there are definitely certain Jags I want to start fading.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just certain things like that. So what about you? Is there any last tight end notes before we hang it up for the evening here?
While the Falcons have got a lot out of their tight end position as a whole, they have the toughest schedule down the stretch for tight end. So you probably aren't too intrigued to get Johnny Smith out there, but if
Especially after the 0 he put up.
for whatever reason, if you've never had Kyle Pitts yet, don't start now because it's not going to be good. It's going to be more of the same that it's always been. It's not going to be different. I know everyone
What's
told
really
you.
annoying is that the Falcons won that game on Sunday because the
Mhm.
Saints are crap. And the
Yeah.
Saints just can't even. And it makes people believe that the Falcons are actually good. And it's like, no, the Falcons are not good.
No.
The problem is there's two different Saints teams. There's the Saints team that is like a borderline playoff team, and then
Mhm.
there's the Saints team that is a bottom 3 team in the NFL. And you don't know which Saints team is coming. But it's
No.
something I've noticed about this year, which is like, oh, that's a borderline playoff team. Oh, that's one of the worst 3 football teams in the NFL.
Yep.
And that's the team that showed up on Sunday against the Falcons.
And it's frustrating because you look at all the pieces they have, it's like there's no reason, especially in that division, that they shouldn't be able to make a run. And it's just like,
They should be competing for winning the division. Like, and they are, I guess, quote,
they should
kind
be
of.
running away with the division with the
They
talent
should at
they have
least
on
be
both sides of the
they should
ball.
at least be leading the division. I
Yeah.
would argue that Tampa is not talent free, right? Like Tampa
Hmm.
has some level of talent. They at least have like a middling quarterback, a couple
Hmm.
decent wide receivers. Defense, the secondary's bad, but the front seven is good.
Yeah.
They have stuff.
No,
And
they
it's
have
kind of
pieces from the Super Bowl they won that are still
well, it's
there.
similar
And
to the Saints. They have stuff. They have pieces
hmm
on defense. They don't have a total defense, but they have pieces of it. And
hmm
they have Kamara, who's looking better this year than he has in years. They have Olave, who prior to getting a concussion has been maddening.
hmm
They spent all that money on Carr to then realize why nobody wanted to spend a lot of money on Derek Carr. Because
Yep.
Carr really is kind of like the epitome of the Saints. Because that was always the knock on Carr. He was always a borderline top 12 fantasy option at quarterback. But he's going to have 2 or 3 games a year where you're going to watch it and be like, what the hell happened here? Did
hmm
you forget how to play football? And that feels like the Saints as a team right now, where it's like, did y'all just forget how to play? Like, what happened? Because they've lost some games that are just embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
Because the Falcons should not be. What are the Falcons? 6-5.
Yeah, I think
They
they're technically leading they're
yeah.
if the season ended today, they would be the team in the playoffs, which
Telling you
is
right now, if I'm running the Saints or the Bucks, and we're not winning the division over the Falcons,
yeah.
many people are being fired. Many people deserve it.
hmm No, and I think Tampa's kind of, um, they avoided that last year somehow. But, I think if they don't do it this year, they're definitely in for it
Yeah,
because
okay, I got it. I pulled it up just for posterity's sake. So it's actually worse than I The Saints and Falcons are tied at the top of the division at 5-6, and the Bucks are 4-7, one game out. So
I don't know how in the world it feels like they've been playing so much better.
yeah, and that's the problem is like they're playing better, but they're not winning games.
Yeah.
And the only reason they're even being discussed as the potential to go to the playoffs is because they're only one game out of the division because
It's the NFC South.
it's the NFC South, right? And the Falcons people keep trying to tell me like, oh, how do you feel now about talking all that crap in the preseason about the Falcons being bad, Arthur Smith getting fired? And I'm like, yo, that could still happen. Okay. Like they're not a good team. They're 5-6.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, they only win at home. The Falcons. They can only win in Atlanta.
Yeah.
They're 4-2 at home. They're 1-4 on the road. So, like, they cannot win games outside of Atlanta. So, yeah, not super excited about any of that. But no, like the Saints, that's the one that's the most disappointing because Tampa, they have documented issues, right? They should be competing for that division and they could do it. Honestly, the Saints should probably be winning.
Well, and I don't know who pulled it up, but it was a comparison from Andy Dalton's year last year to Derek Carr this year, and it's
the same thing.
Yeah,
it's
except for they're paying Derek Carr exponentially more than Andy Dalton.
This is why I was saying if it was me, I would have probably just rolled with Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Because I could do that for a lot less money. And it's like I don't want to pay Derek Carr. I've rostered Derek Carr too many years in fantasy to be fooled by this. I know what that man's ceiling is.
Yeah.
And he's maybe QB, like in real football, he's maybe the 14th best quarterback in the NFL. Maybe. But then you have those weeks where he looks like the 32nd quarterback, looks terrible, looks like he just completely forgotten how to play. He just has those weeks where it's just like that's why he used to be compared to Kirk Cousins because the numbers were like identical. But the difference is that rostering Kirk Cousins is a lot more pleasant.
Yep.
The end numbers are the same. But Kirk Cousins just puts up the same number consistently. A lot more frequently than Carr. Carr's a lot more like this.
Up and down.
Yeah, where it's like like
yep.
all the way down and then whereas Kirk Cousins is like
steady Eddie.
Like little bump, little up and down. But not like Carr.
Dramatic, no.
Yeah, I don't. That's why I was not super thrilled about the Saints bringing in Carr. It makes sense in a real football perspective, but not for the amount of money they spent.
No.
Like if you want to bring in Derek Carr, I don't care because you think Derek Carr gives you more of an advantage over Jameis or Andy Dalton. I mean, I could certainly never want to go back to Andy Dalton. Like that experiment had to be over.
Yeah.
But it's like Jameis was a lot cheaper. And it's like, okay, I guess we could do that and then spend the rest of the excess money on like defense and O-line and nice toys, right? You know, things that will help me. But no, we'll just pay Derek Carr. And it's like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Again, if you want to pay Derek Carr to come and play for you, I don't really have a problem with that. When you pay him all that guaranteed money is when I start to get like, what are you doing? It's the same thing with the Russell Wilson contract. They brought Russell Wilson in, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, you got to do something. Like, the problem I had was not giving up a pick to get Russell Wilson and picking up his existing contract. It was giving him a 3-year extension with $50 million guaranteed without him ever taking a snap for you. That's where I'm like, nope. You're going to play out your existing contract for 1 year, and then at the end of that year, then we will negotiate.
Yeah.
We are not giving you a guaranteed money extension before you've ever taken one snap from me. Sorry.
They jumped the gun on that, and that
they thought they had the sauce. And I get why you think that, but it's like, no, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
And it's the same thing with like the Jets, where it's like they didn't give Aaron Rodgers like all that money guaranteed. They gave him an extension and a little bit more money, but they didn't give him $50 million fully guaranteed. Like,
No.
it's never a good idea to do something like that. And I know they built some out years into the contract, but still, that was like you basically locked yourself into 3 years before you could ever get out, and he'd never taken a snap for you. Year 1 was a tire fire. Year 2 has been better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we talked about last week. It's because Sean Payton has gotten involved, and as much of a dick as I think Sean Payton is, as documented as a dick as Sean Payton is, really, he has done a good job with Russell Wilson. Literally, like, basically, from what I can gather, the way the relationship works is I'm in charge and you do what I say.
Yeah.
And if you want to win, you're gonna do what I say, and you're gonna shut the F up. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear about let Russ cook. I don't want to hear about let's ride. I don't want to hear about your wife. I don't want to hear about your kids. I don't want to hear about you doing high knees on a plane.
Kissing babies.
You're gonna sit down and you're gonna shut up and you're gonna run the offense I give you.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make you look good.
Right.
And that's what it is. And I from what I can tell, from the people I know, because I don't have zero sources. I have a couple.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I'm talking to freaking what's his nuts. I can't think of the man's name. I don't know why I'm blanking on their GM's name. I don't know why I'm blanking on that.
Walt.
It's getting late. It's getting late. And I'm falling asleep here. What is that guy's name? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not talking to their
Peyton.
Oh, it's the other Peyton. It is Peyton. It's Peyton to Peyton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not talking to them, but
yeah,
I know people who are part of that organization, and they'll tell you things when you know them. I can't give up any names, but I know some people who work there, and from what I understand, that's basically the relationship. Is I am in charge. They tried it your way, and how did that go?
Yeah.
Okay, now we do it my way, and they did. They took away a lot of like. So when Hackett was there, Russ had his own office at Mile High, and they got rid of all that, and they made him go back down to the locker room with everyone else. And he used to have like this special parking space. They got rid of that. They had a parking space for his wife. At training camp, his wife had a whole entourage of people there at training camp, and they were all sitting right near the front. Like basically where the fans would normally be. That's where Russ's family was. And apparently Sean Payton got rid of all of that.
Yeah.
Parking spaces, nope. You park with the rest of the team. Your wife, she shouldn't even be here. Like, I know your wife is, Ciara, like what, I don't care. And he's like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. That doesn't matter to me in terms of winning football games. Right. She can go sit in the owner's box with everybody else if she wants, but not down here. Like, this is for the players. And it also, you're pissing off your teammates because you're getting special privileges that the rest of them aren't getting. And I'm not going to give them those special privileges, so you don't get them either, so fuck you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at with the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, that's actually probably a very healthy attitude to have. Like, so, and apparently that's just the way it is. Like, they've just decided, like, no, Sean has told him, like, you're running this offense. This is the offense I'm giving you. We're going to accentuate what you do well, which is, like short, intermediate stuff, game management. I'm expecting you to, like, you're going to throw the ball like 29 times a game. I'm expecting you to complete like 25 passes. We're going to put you in a position to do that. It's going to be a lot more running the ball. It's going to look a lot like the old Seattle offense with some Saints twists wrinkled in. And since they switched to that and just started playing defense,
it works.
Won like 5 games in a row.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's that I think is kind of like settled down a lot of that crap in the background. That and firing some people that needed to get fired. But they've really tightened that up in the background around Russ. And that's kind of where it's like Russ is interesting because he's interesting only for that reason. So like year 2, it might be salvageable. So we're going to have to see how year 3 of this contract goes. Because I can pretty much guarantee you that he's playing quarterback for the Broncos next year, given how much
Oh
money they owe him. So that's the question: is like, you had one really, really bad year. I'll tell you this right now: if they actually do make the playoffs, a lot of shit's going to get forgiven very quickly.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people are going to be taking mea culpas on that one, because I know how this town works. They love the Broncos. You're talking about like in the Twin Cities, it's hockey, then football, then baseball. Here it's historically football, big drop. Like Broncos, big gap. Avs, Nuggets, Rockies are like way down here.
Yeah.
Recently, over the last couple years, and this has been a big shift, it doesn't work that way anymore. Now it's Avs, Nuggies, Broncos are down here.
Yeah.
Because they haven't won anything in a long time. And frankly, they've upset a lot of their diehard fan base by not being competitive.
Yeah. And the Nuggets, I think, just won, and the Avalanche,
they won 2 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, no, the Nuggets won last year. The Avs won 2 years ago.
Yeah, because Jokic. Yeah, I remember those
so they've had
interviews about him and his horse.
Right. So they've had 2 titles, not football titles.
Right.
And the thing is, this town, most places, like they won't cover it the same way when the other teams are good. Like Chicago, for example, when the Bears were really, really bad and the Hawks were good, they spent a lot more time talking about the Hawks. Here, they were talking about the Broncos, even when the Broncos sucked for years as the primary coverage spot. But once you had championship teams, that's when I think the Broncos were like, oh, crap.
Yep.
We're losing market share in our own town. Because we've got 2 other teams that are championship teams, and we haven't won anything since Peyton Manning. And that was 10 years ago, by the way.
Makes me feel old.
Yeah, me too. But I had that thought the other day, which is that it's 2013.
Oh, jeez.
And so I believe that was that was one of the Broncos Super Bowls, was the 2013. I think that's right.
No, I think it was 2015. I think 2013 was Seattle.
Oh, that's when they went to the Super Bowl and lost.
Yeah. No, 2014 no. Fuck.
I got it. It's 2016 is when they actually won it. But 2013 is like, okay, so we're almost at 10 years.
Yeah.
We're coming up on 10 years since the last title.
Jesus.
They won the AFC Championship in 13 and lost. That's what I'm thinking of. And then in 15, they did the same thing. They won the AFC Championship. No. That's the one they won. It's the 15th season. It's that stupid crap where it's the 15th season and then it's they won it in technically what is technically 2016, but I don't view that as the 2016 Super Bowl, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, 13 is the year they went to Seattle and lost. And then 15 is when they beat Carolina. So there you go. So yeah, it's been 10 years ago was the first bite at this apple with Manning. So it's getting to that point where it's like, oh God, 2 more years of bad football. It'll have been a decade since we've actually like done anything.
Right.
So it's getting to that point where it's like, no, they got to make some changes and do some stuff and get something done, or they're going to start winding up in that weird purgatory. I wouldn't call it the Bears, because the Bears is
the Bears
infinitely sadder, but you're talking about things like, there are other teams like that have been like really good, and then they go through really bad dry patches for a long time, but it damages the fan base. So, all right. Well, Lance, final thoughts for this evening. Final thoughts for Week 13 to try and help people survive the Bipocalypse 2.0.
Push all your chips to the middle of the table for Zach Moss. That's about what I got. It's the most exciting thing on the wire.
I agree. Fired up. This is it, baby. Just dump it all. Blow the wad. Yep. Because this is it.
Yep.
unless you're playing a guillotine, and then refer to our earlier advice. But for everyone else,
Yep.
chips in the center of the table, baby. That's where we're going here. So, anyway, with that, Lance, I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun tonight. We know we went a little long.
Yep.
And then next week, like I said, is the last episode for the season of Making the Cut. And then Lance will pivot over and join Jason and I on Roster the People on Thursday nights. So we're looking forward to that. And I'm sorry that there will be no more Tuesday show. You're going to have to get your degeneracy somewhere else. Maybe try tuning into Locked In on Friday with Mason and Vishal. Get your prop bet action all nice and neat and sorted for you. But we will be back. I will be back on Thursday for Roster the People. And then again, we will be around on Sunday for the final countdown. Lance and I will be back one last time for the season for week 14 for Making the Cut on Tuesday. So we're looking forward to talking to you then. But until that comes, good luck in week 13. Good luck surviving the final apocalypse. Send your hate mail to Roger Goodell and keep up the nonsense.